welcome viewers, welcome back to this NPTEL course on ESD. In the last class actually we are discussing about the sustainable leaders, the leadership attributes like sustainable mindset, then systems thinking and then relationship building. So, today we will continue with this only. So, what are the other attributes and characteristics strengths of sustainable leaders? As you can see, the sustainable leader is the anyone who chooses to engage in the process of creating transformative change with others aimed towards a sustainable future economically, environmentally and socially. So, here we have already discussed that how for the sustainability leaders also or sustainable leadership also these three triple bottom line domains of sustainability paradigm is important, that like economically sustainable, environmentally sustainable and socially sustainable. So, looking at this framework, let us explain, let us discuss what are the job responsibilities, the task responsibilities, the duties and attributes of sustainable leaders. First thing is that they take the responsibility, he has to take the responsibility of the goal, of the objective, of the task at hand. So, what is the first thing is that he has to take the responsibility of the whole team, the task at hand or the organizational goals. So, look for the holistic interconnections that we have already discussed, that the sustainable leaders they are supposed to have a vision for holistic development, that is the holistic perspective, that is, and how each attributes each dimensions, each aspects are interconnected, interrelated, how the whole thing can function and at the end the outcome, learning outcome, performance outcome will be more holistic and more viable, socio-economically viable, environmentally sustainable, everything. So, to look for the holistic perspective and the interconnectedness in between and among all the domains of the context or the spheres of activity. Then comes the convene the constructive conversations, and in order to come to the conclusion, in order to develop a strategic plan. So, the leader has to engage every member of the team, of the organization or of the committee to have the constructive conversations. So, that is to how to have the constructive conversation regarding all aspects of the project, of the task, of the you can say of the planning of the plan. So, to have the constructive conversation among all the members with all kinds of analysis, with all kinds of the critical evaluation to that means to have a in-depth analysis of its implications and especially the socio-economic and environmental implications of these things. So, to convene, so he has to arrange for the meeting, he has to arrange for the discussion, he has to arrange for the forum to convene the constructive conversations regarding the project, regarding the task or regarding the goal. So, then embrace the creative tension. Again, when the members are engaged, they will be engaged in different kinds of dialogue, conversation, discussion, brainstorming. So, both in favor, both against. So, that means when they are engaged in critical evaluation, critical discussion, critical appraisal, etc. So, definitely there will be some tension. So, tensions may be related in terms of dilemma, in terms of conflicts, in terms of arguments, in terms of justifications, viewpoints, perspectives, but the leader he has to embrace all this creative tension, because whatever conflict, dilemma that arise, if it is related to task, if it is related to process of the execution, if it is related to any constructive dimensions or any kind of tension that is related to creative input, creative implications. So, that is welcome. That is welcome in the sense that the more discussion will be held, the more critical appraisal will be held on this topic. The topic will be you can say the project will be more risk free, and the and the plan and the strategy will be more robust and especially the members, because the members they consist of the heterogeneous background, heterogeneous type. So, when all the heterogeneous members and the people they discuss, they view it, they analyze it from their perspective, and that that causes also different kinds of debates, dialogues, conversations, conflicts, dilemmas, etc. But the leader has to welcome this kind of creative tension and try to resolve it more more efficiently, more sustainably, more consensusly, so that the plan and project plan and strategies will be more risk proof, foolproof or robust kind of design. So, here again the facilitate the emerging outcomes. So, whatever the outcome will be there after this conversation, after getting the consensus of all the members and agreement of all the stakeholders. So, that the leader has to facilitate that emerging outcome, the ultimate the result. So, whatever the decision, the plans, the strategies that has come up out of this discussion, then it has to be implemented, and so the leader has to take the initiative to facilitate this emerging outcomes. Then comes to understand the social change dynamics. So, after this when the plans and strategy will be implemented, etc., there may be it may have definitely have the some impact on the society that can bring some kind of social change, some dynamics, some change in the dynamics of the people, HR dynamics or within the organizations. So, he has to better understand that social change or the dynamics among the people within the organization, in the society, in the community. So, the leader has to understand it and act accordingly. So, then thereafter you can say the experiment, learn and adjust. So, with this social dynamics, change in the dynamics and the social change, after understanding it, then he has to experiment with the team members to further learn, maybe that to skip some of the things, to drop some of the strategies and to adjust, to adopt this plan of action implementation plan as per the welfare and well-being or adaptability of the society, of the community, of the or you can say the stakeholders needs. So, after this only then it can be, we can say then it can be strengthened. So, it can be finalized and then it can be adopted by the organization, by the society, by the community. So, experiment on the idea and the strategy and the plans to learn something, and again at the same time it has to be economically cost effective, economically viable, it has to be environmentally sustainable, it has to be socially socially you can say conducive, socially viable, socially conducive. So, the society must accept it, environmentally sustainable and also economically feasible and viable. So, this thing with this thing again then it can be implemented in the work process in the so that is that to expand the conscious awareness. With the implementation we can also the leader can also enhance and increase the horizon of awareness, conscious awareness, and make it a part of this daily routine or daily practice, etc. So, this is the cycle, this is the leadership's functional or operational cycle and stages of functioning in the sustainable leadership. So, any leader who wants to be the sustainable leader or at least who wants to function or work in the area of sustainability, sustainable organizational sustainability, institutional sustainability, then they have to follow this kind of framework, these parameters and these kind of steps. So, now let us discuss about some of the sustainability leadership practices. What are these practices? So, first thing is that definitely the leader has to take the responsibility. In taking the responsibility, so he has to, first of all he has to make certain things like the making sustainability relevant to others. So, he has to apprise, he has to educate, he has to inform all the stakeholders regarding the sustainability strategies that he is incorporating in the responsibilities in the job specification, and what are its long term success, how it can lead towards the long term success of the business of the organizations, how the sustainable solutions can also be the effective solution or best solution for not only the core challenges of our emerging challenges or present challenges, but it is also going to help us and in restoring our resources and restoring organizations for the future, that means for the future of protection of the sustainable future of the organization as well as the society. So, he has to make it that means justify it as the sustainability strategies as to be effective and long term effective, and how these solutions are sustainable, and it can ensure sustainable future for us. So, then making things happen. So, after this collaboratively constructing and implementing different type of strategic initiatives, plans, etc., creative thinking and actions with the existing legal framework, policies, economic policies, legal framework, etc., and after getting the support sustainability, support of the sustainability progress, etc., then actual the things also, that means they are going to being executed. They are going to be executed by the self and others. So, here when it is these strategies are going to be implemented, so all the members, the leader himself as well as all other members are also equally accountable, equally agreeable towards the outcomes. So, then sustainably energy and momentum, what is the finding the way for sustaining one's own and other energy. So, here primarily deals with the manpower or other resources, that is the energy, the energy, the spirit you can say, to be an active member or the responsible stakeholder of these communities or the groups. So, that every practitioner of the communities of reflection, learning and development, they must practice or they must develop. The practitioner of communities, they are the member of the learning communities or practitioner communities, and every member develops the reflective thinking to analyze and verify all the outcomes, and they sometimes if required they are learning, relearning, and maybe sometimes they can also unlearn certain things if they think that it is irrelevant, it is not useful. So, sustainable energy and momentum in terms of action, in terms of motivation, in terms of spirit, in terms of practice and in terms of active and reflective thinking. So, then look for the holistic interconnection, how the sustainable leader can can have a holistic perspective, and he can interconnect all the aspects of the project, of the plan, of the in a very interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary way, and can find out the gaps and find out some of the cues also which would be relevant. So, thinking holistically, being mindful of interdependent connections. So, being mindful, that means focusing on the present challenges, emerging challenges, thinking holistically, that means with a holistic perspective, that means in terms of its broader scope, not that means beyond the particular context, that so which would be relevant for the future. So, being mindful for interdependent connections, that means what are the other domains, what are the other disciplines, what are the other peripheral network which are also equally relevant or equally interconnected to this whole system. So, suppose in the suburb, in the village, remote area, or then any suburb area. So, the their organization is going to going to design and start a new plant in terms of manufacturing, in terms of water plant or whatever, in terms of any business. So, any plant, if it is going to start a new plant and install a new plant in the new area, then what are the adjacent, what are the co-factors that are there, and not only in terms of the rural or the local resources, but also people's needs, then the environmental factors, then the economical viability, then transport, then business opportunities. So, all the relevant interconnected, interdependent connections, even the political scenario also, that is also relevant. So, he has to explore all these things, being mindful in focusing each and every issue of the current situation, of the present situation, and then have a holistic vision for enlarging its you can say that means a broader scope and implementation for the future as well. So, marshalling and amplifying the resources for optimal impact. So, exploring the opportunity to that means to act in multiple dimensions, like as what are the first thing is that what are the resources available, what are the skills and competencies of the people available, what are the raw materials available, what are the transport and communication system available. So, he has to explore everything, and if it is possible, sometimes he can also amplify the resources, expand the resources to have an optimal positive impact on the project, on the society. So, that is to convene the constructive conversation with creating space for participating a constructive conversation with with encouraging the people to actively participate in terms of raising questions, queries, doubts, and discover the different perspectives and connections, and welcome their comments, feedbacks, feedbacks and long term implications, its impact, long term implications for the society, for the community people and their living standard, on the business, on their socio-political scenario, everything. So, that is how to create space and encourage the people to participate in the constructive conversation by engaging them in different kinds of brainstorming sessions, question hours and then question hour sessions, then queries, then the quizzes, and also having the dialogue also, having the dialogue. So, building authentic relationship during this period only from the beginning. So, rapport building is also very important. That means, rapport building or expanding the leadership relationship, authentic leadership. That means, who are the other stakeholders who are directly or indirectly available in that area, like health professionals or maybe the educational institutions or maybe the block development officers or maybe NGOs working in this area or maybe sub central government agencies. So, the sustainable leader has to look forward for building the authentic relationship for developing and implementing this integrated solution. So, to have its long term partnership, intergenerational engagement, that means beyond the time, then learning and support the relationship and its long term implication for the social benefit and the community well-being. So, that is authentic relationship. Third is that engaging the experts and the collaborators. Sometimes he has to invite some experts and some mentors to and invite their collaboration and also engage them in guiding, giving the suggestions, and that way the collective discovery of the learning needed to broaden the system capability. Maybe that the experts, the experienced persons, they can also give us the suggestions like what could be the possible risk factors, what could be the possible hazards, what could be the possible consequences, and so how to be proactive in being better prepared to deal with that kind of emergencies, maybe. So, how to acquire and leverage the impact of resources already available, and how to leverage the strategic partnerships. So, here authentic relationship building and at the same time engaging the outside resource people, those who are willing to work, willing to help the team, willing to collaborate, willing to work in the collective discovery or broadening the system of capability, and so that we can also leverage the maximum impact of the resources and from that strategic partnerships. So, these are that means interconnections, holistic interconnections and the capabilities and you can say skills and competencies of the sustainable leaders. Then embrace the creative tension. Creative tension, when definitely for a number of people they will be engaged in debate, discussion, etc. So, and when we are expanding the network of leaders, definitely different people, they have the diverse point of view, but we have to simultaneously look into their perspective, their viewpoints, and figuring out what could be its effect, what could be the possible solutions for the collective good. So, how to draw a consensus and how to design and develop a plan which will be more effective, efficient, risk free and hazard free, less hazardous and sustainable for the future generation as well. So, working with the relational power dynamics. Again, here we have to also understand the complex nuances of dynamic power relationships, like within the member, among the team, within the team members, within the group. So, how this associated creative tension can work for others, and how to normalize, how to normalize, how to deal with these equations, the power equations, to get the maximum support, active support of each and every member, active member. So, and how this when working with others also, whose active support is very much critical for the learning process and success. Maybe that some key members, some key technical members, some key experts or some key mentors support is very much, you can say, inevitable, or we can say these are some of the prerequisites required for for completion of the project or the task. So, how to deal with this power dynamics, relational power dynamics, and to engage everybody with their consensus and support. Then understanding and working with the paradoxes, ambiguity and conflict. And while working, there may be so many situation context may arise which are contradictory to each other, which are conflict oriented, which are not very clear, and sometimes so we have to face the ambiguity also. So, sometimes some truths are contradictory. So, how to hold on the space for this disagreement, how to deal with the conflict, how to manage the conflict, how to resolve the conflict, and recognizing that the associated tension is is a potent of source of energy, like tension or the conflict related to the process of the task, or the design of the task, how to conduct it, how to solve it. If it is related to task and the process of work, then these creative tensions are very positive, or you can say it can bring the creative shift in the understanding and direction of the work. So, this all the disagreements, conflicts, chaos, the dilemmas related to task at hand, how to resolve the task, resolve the problem, and process related, then these are all considered to be constructive. If it is not relationship, that means if there is no ego class, there is no superiority or inferiority complex, or there is no kind of power imbalance, power imbalance, like hierarchical or autocracy. So, then otherwise all kinds of other kinds of conflicts are welcome. Also, how to deal with these paradoxes, how to deal with contradictory truths. So, it has to be encouraged. So, conflict always related to the task, related to the work processes, related to the targets and goals and achievements are very much constructive, because it deals because it is everybody's effort that how to perform it, how to complete it in a very successful way, that so that it will be 100% 360 degree risk proof, risk free, and more sustainable. So, now so then again the same thing, that facilitating the emerging outcomes, that continually assessing the opportunities and the risks. So, from the argument onwards, when we step into the action plan, then all the time, every time you have to have the continuous assessment, evaluation, not only of the risk, but also opportunity. So, here from time to time we have to do the SWOT analysis at every step, and competency mapping, evaluation, so that we can also explore the that what are the opportunities available for the sustainable strategies, and what are the calculated risks are there, how much risk we can take, how to employ the sustainability strategies, and from time to time they need to do the SWOT analysis to evaluate the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and accordingly move forward. So, understanding the working with the paradox of ambiguity that we have to deal with, like need to predict certainty, and how it is the possibility of certainty, and the need to predict the outcome, sometimes engaging with others to find the solutions, similarly making things happen after all this planning, strategic planning, resource management, everything, etc. Now, how to actually make it has really happen, like by that means achieving the concrete results through others, by co-creating and abiding by the agreed upon rules of the game, with a flexible strategic framework, and structuring the tangible processes and agreements. So, before beginning of the execution, then we have to go through when the large members are involved, then we have to follow certain rules, guidelines of the agreement, etc., and strategic framework in terms of distribution of work, in terms of tangible outcomes, tangible agreements, norms, rules, processes, and timely execution of the actions, and responsibility, and the joint monitoring of accountability and transparency. So, these things have to be actually when actually this will be executed, this will be implemented, it has to be monitored regularly with different types of stakeholder group taking the responsibility of this task. So, now then again understand the social change dynamics, because suppose this is the large number, is a large member, is a large member group, so large team having the large number of members. So, again, so their social cohesiveness, their social relationship, their their, you can say, their orientation towards the goal, their commitment, their motivation, and their willingness to work together, and their dedication, their effort, everything is very important, everything is very important. So, how to how to mobilize them, how to motivate them. So, that is a noticing and making the sense of pattern. What is that pattern? Experimenting with its strategies to interrupt existing pattern to serve to galvanize the status quo. So, suppose the leader wants to bring some kind of change, innovative change in the work process, or maybe that to introduce a new product or whatever new things, innovative ideas. So, he has to first of all apprise it, inform it, to everybody in the both in the formal way and informal way. Then he has to seek their feedbacks, their views, their viewpoints, their feedback, he has to understand their perspectives, then discuss on. So, it is a long process for communicating, for educating, for getting the feedback, for working on the feedback. So, it requires a lot of time, lot of process, then only the people will be agreeing to work together, and the building of trust is very important. Trust and cohesiveness, that will be built up in the long process. So, if you want to bring any change in the status quo, existing pattern, existing habits and practices, then we have to it has to be introduced, it has to be introduced to the every member of the group or the organization in a very slow and very communication oriented and an effective way, so that every member will think that yes, it is really effective, it is really going to help organization, help him or enhance the work effectiveness, or it can bring sustainable change. So, that is the things, and understanding the human change process also. So, as human beings, we cannot equate the human resource with other technical resources or financial resources or the material resources. So, human beings are liable to change, their minds their minds are not that means they are bound to change. So, they are not, that means living organizations or the human beings mind, we cannot say that these are very much fixed. They have the liberty, flexibility, dynamism, and moods, moods, then they have the personality traits, all kinds of the flexibilities and their dynamism are there. So, in order to, so maybe that they are also that means they are also bound to change in the sense that we cannot predict, that means they cannot be you can say taken for granted. You can say that once they have said yes, means they are committed, completely committed, they can change their mindset, their viewpoints. So, they are very much flexible. So, that kind of liberty and freedom should also be given to all the members to come to the consensus. So, here understanding human change process, their personal needs, emotional needs, psychosocial needs. So, and having the diverse people experience in the dynamics from natural rhythms of change and the chaotic environment with cultural differences, backgrounds, or sometimes with the new and unconventional ideas are also being introduced. So, with this all, we have to make us familiar with all these kind of human change process mechanisms. So, understanding the social dynamics, social change dynamic, human dynamics, HR dynamics is also equally important. So, experiment, learn and adjust. Experiment, learn and adjust, that means before introducing anything, we have to experiment on it with a pilot study, with a small sample study. So, you can say adopting and using the sustainability framework for integrating analysis of action. So, the 5 domains of sustainable communities, these are related to eco-state, natural state, system condition, natural capitalism. So, all these ISO 14001 environmental management and sustainable leadership engagement framework. So, these are some of the guidelines are there to which we have to adopt using this sustainability framework. Whatever strategic plan we are going to introduce or integrate in our system, it has to be integrated with the sustainability framework of integrated analysis action. It has to adjust, it has to be adaptable with the 5 domains of the sustainable communities. Learning through experimentation, everybody should be willing to learn in new ways, taking calculated risk, experimental thinking, experiential learning, learning by doing, reflective thinking, critical appraisal, all kinds of things should be, that means higher order thinking process should be implemented. And so, and everybody should be encouraged to actively engage themselves and practice this kind of experimental thinking, critical evaluation. Then sharing the information, knowledge as it unfolds. So, another thing is that knowledge, that means information creation, information sharing the information or disseminating the information as it unfolds. So, more we proceed, the more we explore new ideas and solution strategies, it has to be shared with others. So, strengthening the collective practice of experimentation, adaptation and or learning. So, that is why in the organization, if any small change also takes place, it has to be immediately, instantly communicated to all stakeholders, both both investors, suppliers, as well as direct as well as the indirect stakeholders, that is through the communication channel. So, strengthening that strengthens the collective practice, collective willpower, collective spirit of the of all the stakeholders. So, strengthening the collective practice of experimentation, adaptation and learning. So, as you can see, this is a healthy leadership for model. So, you can say strategic relationship, strategic planning, strategic thinking, all these things are there. From there, yes, every time that will be positive, that means outcome would be more towards a positive. That means even though there conflicts and tensions are there, but ultimately the goal is to how to how to come to the positive consequences, positive result. Then value oriented, it has to be value oriented within the legal framework, ethical and socially useful, sustainable, etc. Then the strength focused, then we have to focus more on the strengths, positive aspects. So, rather than that means rather than pointing out, pinpointing or accusing or highlighting the weaknesses. So, weaknesses are to be that means are to be that means overpowered, weakness are to be sorted out, weakness are to be overcome through the different strategies. So, and how this can be all these aspects can be interlinked with the in an interconnected way, in an interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary way, then we can say the outcome will be more sustainable, because it has been verified, it has been experimented, and now it can be made a part of our daily practice, a routine, or even as a product or manufacturing process. So, this is the kind of so this is the kind of the learning cycle from one step to the till the last step, that is when we can claim that yes, it is more sustainable, the process may be sustainable, the product may be sustainable, the service may be sustainable. So, here from time to time we have to evaluate it, verify it, and analyze it through SWOT analysis, and analyze it SWOT analysis, and also whether it is cost effective, it is strategically more sustainable and beneficial for the community. So, it has to always we have to look into its holistic perspective or broader perspective of social implications. So, then again expand the conscious awareness, that is conscious awareness that we will discuss in the next class. So, I am stopping it right now here only. So, we will continue with the next class, next part in the next class. Thank you very much.